Welcome to Quit to Win, or the show where we explore the moments people have to let go, destructive pattern, limiting identity, and the internal battle to rebuild their life with purpose and clarity. Our today's guest is Cameron Tope, co-founder of Emerson Property Management, owner of more than 30 rental property, and operator of over 300 doors across the greater Houston area. He started out in oils and gas in Houston in 2013, watched people around him get laid off, and decided he was done building his finance future from someone else's industry. He bought his first renter, couldn't find a property manager he trusted to run them the way he wanted. So he ran them himself. Our friendly and family started asking for help, and a business was born out. Today, Cameron has helped landlord turn underperforming property into a higher performing asset through better system, better execution, and a more disciplined approach, because he has been on both sides of the relationship himself. Cameron, it's a pleasure and honor have you on the show.
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me on. I want to meet that guy. That was a great intro.
Yeah, thank you so much, Cameron. Cameron, so you moved to Houston in 2013 for oil and gas, and pretty quickly started watching people around you get laid off. What did that wake up call feel like in real time? And what did you have to quit believing about job security before you could actually act on what you were showing to assure you?
Yeah, that was it. It was, my mom never made more than $14,000 a year. She was a massage therapist. My dad was a contractor. So they wanted me to go to school and work for a large company. And I thought, petroleum engineering, there's no bigger industry than oil and gas. And so I thought I had a really safe job, and that couldn't be anything further from the truth. So yeah, it kind of shattered my belief that getting a W job and working for a large company meant I was going to have job security and be safe.
Yeah.
And it didn't mean that at all. So yeah, in real time, it felt very jolting. When I saw guys and gals who were, at the top of their career, making six figures, they were super smart, but they just got caught up in, the bad industry or just bad oil price, with oil prices being low. So it's like, I didn't like the fact that even though I could be performing really well, I could be doing really, really well and busting my butt, that I could still have my job in jeopardy. So that's when I turned over to real estate, and, you mentioned the rest.
Yeah, a whole lot to really get to make reference of here. The fact that, smart people were getting top of their career and they were being laid off. And the emotional part of it alone is really a whole lot. And having to see it firsthand, it's a whole lot. And so also, you couldn't find a property management to trust or to run your own renter the way you would when you actually got to buy your first property. So you did it yourself. What did that experience reveal about the gap? The gap between how most property management think and how the owner actually think.
Yeah, I think some folks believe that it's like adversarial, like the property manager wins, the owner loses. But in reality, the property manager typically works for the lease, or we're in Texas, so the Texas property code. So sometimes we side with the tenant. Sometimes we have to side with the owner. And so the owner loves it when we side with them, but doesn't love it when we side with the tenant. But we're really just trying to make sure that we protect the owner's asset, that we protect the resident, and we protect the property. And if we do that as a good asset manager, a good property manager, then everything, typically runs pretty smoothly. But the owners sometimes get too emotional. People, like when they have health issues and somebody is in their families, like might be a physician or a doctor or whatever, like it can cloud some of your judgment on how you want to provide that, protocol for them. And I think that's what happens sometimes. You get a property and an owner gets so emotionally charged about the property and losing money, or I got to get this rented, so I need to get a tenant in here really quickly. And then they want to skip qualifications. Whereas for us, or for your property manager, it can kind of be that great barrier between your emotions, or maybe you losing money and not thinking very clearly, because nobody acts well under duress. So we can be that barrier for you to say, listen, hey, I know it's tough right now, but this is not a good idea to accept the next person that can fog a mirror. We need to get somebody in here who's qualified, just to have that voice of reason to step back, because again, almost nothing's more emotional than money. People get very charged and energized about money, and especially when they're losing money. So I think, it can be an adversarial relationship, but it can also be a super beneficial relationship and almost like an advisor.
Yeah, almost like an advisor, being that, you stand between the gap between the owner and that of the tenant, and being able to kind of manage property very well Why securing more like communicating what the tenant has to say, and actually more like maintaining the interests of the owner. So it's really amazing. So Emerson didn't just start as a grand business plan. Now it started with friends, family asking you for help. What was the moment you stopped feeling like a favor and started feeling like a company?
Probably when I hired my first employee, I would say that's when it really started. So that would have been the first person I hired was in 2019. I had to end up firing them because they were stealing money. But that was probably when I really felt like, oh my gosh, this is a real company. I was just so busy that I had to have somebody help me out. And so that's when I hired, and that's when things started to grow. And I'm like, I think this is going to be the real deal. I think this is actually, going to be a real business. And it was not, I think that was kind of the decision point. So 2019, 2020. And, I still don't find myself as like an entrepreneur, even though people, because I feel like there's a visual of that, right? Like somebody sitting in Silicon Valley coming up with something clever.
Yeah.
Like my business was out of necessity. There was nothing there out of like, oh, I want to create the next invention, or I can't wait to, be in this magazine. I didn't give a crap about any of that stuff. It was more of like, I need to solve my problem. And then it just happened to be that there were a lot of other people in the area that had the same problem I did.
Yeah. Such kind of basic stuff, but boring stuff. But you have to figure out from your end. And at the end of the day, they are turning their eyes into your side. You have to kind of figure out to manage it properly. It's really amazing now. And now you own more than 30 rentals and manage over 300 for other investors. What did you have to quit doing in your own portfolio? The instincts that work at 5 property before you could operate efficiently at 30.
I don't think that ever ends. So I remember taking away maintenance. So having a maintenance person and handing that to a maintenance coordinator that I hired, and she was wearing multiple hats, but being able to say, okay, listen, I don't have to be the one to dispatch every single thing or a person every single time a tenant calls in for a leaky pipe. And then it goes to, okay, well, I don't have to be the one to send out the lease agreement. Then I don't have to be the one to determine how much or what kind of property turn we need to do, what kind of finishes the property needs. And I don't think that ever ends. I think, in the business that we're at right now at the size we're at, I'm still wearing a couple different hats. And each person on our team is wearing 2 or 3 different hats. We're not at the size where we only have one person and all they do is lease renewals, and one person and all they do is move in and move out inspections, and one person, all they do is utilities. We have people wearing multiple hats. So I think it will continue to be like that. And I think that's just a sign of a growing business. It's like things change. The business that we were at 5 doors, and whether if you own one property, you have a business. That is your business. So your business at one property is very different at 10, very different at 100, very different at 1,000. So I think that never really changes. And I would say, something I talk about quite frequently is about what you should give up first. There are some companies or some, influencers out there that might say, give away the lowest value task first. Give away something that you can hire out really cheaply. But I always thought, and the way I did is I hired out the things and I wanted to get rid of the things off my plate that drained me. Because when they drain your energy, then you don't have energy to go do the stuff that you want to do. And so, there's low value tasks that I still like to do. I still take care of, I water my tomato plant every day. I could pay somebody to do that for nothing. I walk my dog. I could pay somebody to do that, but I enjoy that stuff. So what I would say is if you're looking to what you're going to do when you start hiring out or what you have to hand off when your business grows, I would start with the stuff that drains you and then go to the lower level tasks or the tasks that you can hire out at a cheaper rate.
Yeah, delegate those things that drain you. And actually more like, I figure out, and actually double down those things that actually interest you the most. I think that is the only way you can actually sustain your resourcefulness rather than being drained from one end and losing it all. Yeah, this is really amazing. And also you believe that most landlords are running their renters wrongly and it's costing them more than that they realize of. What is the most consistent things you see landlords quit too early? The discipline, the system, or the standards that directly lead to underperformance?
Yeah, I think a lot of owners are upset that they just planted an acorn and the next week it's not an oak tree. Yeah. And so they want to speed it up. They're like, let's go. I want to bear fruit. I want to pull, I want this tree to provide shade right now. I want to go. But things take time, and I think you just have to be mindful that if you start pulling out a lot of money off the rental property, then you need to be ready to have money for when the AC breaks or roof has an issue or foundation has a problem. So I see a lot of owners kind of take some of those monthly distributions or take their money and then spend it, think they have it all to be spent instead of setting some money aside for large items like I mentioned, roof, foundation, AC, and being a little bit more prudent with knowing that they don't have any problem taking their car in for an oil change or getting new tires. They expect that, right? Everybody expects automobile maintenance and repairs. But some owners, for some reason, expect to spend less on their home, which is incredibly more complex in a vehicle, than they do on their vehicle. So it's like they need to just put a little bit in perspective of like, this thing breaks down. There are things that are going to have to happen. So set some money aside for that. That would be one thing. The second thing would be sense of urgency. I see a lot of owners, I shouldn't say a lot, I just see newer investors be lackadaisical and kind of take their time with getting the property leased. And a secret cash flow killer is vacant. Every day that property sits vacant, every single day, it is costing you money. So you have to be mindful and be organized to get everything lined up as quickly as you can so that you can get that property producing money. Because if you go 3 or 4 or 5 months without any sort of rent coming in, it's going to be almost impossible for you to make money.
So true. So true.
Yeah. So it's that vacancy and making sure that you get organized to get vacancy minimized is the other major one I see.
Amazing. And also, you also said that cheap property management are never actually cheap. What does a landlord have to quit optimizing for short-term costs? Is it the convenience or avoiding a hard conversation before they could actually make a decision about management that actually protect their investment?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what I was mentioning a little earlier, where it's like they have to set aside some funds. They have to make sure that they have a maintenance plan. Listen, if you don't want to fix up your air conditioner and it's at 12 years, that's fine, or replace it. But just make sure you have some money set aside because you probably only have a couple years left. So I would say that is a big thing I see with newer investors, that they don't really get they don't really plan for the unexpected or set some money aside for that. And a property manager they can engage with would have some of that knowledge. Like, hey, this property is, we've leased other properties in this area. It's going to take a little bit of time to lease. So give yourself, 30, 40, 50, 60 days. Or, my gosh, this is a huge turnover. Are you ready to spend 10, 15, 20,000? And if the answer is no, we've had that happen where we turn a property and we go, Mr. and Mrs. Owner, we need $10,000. And they go, we don't have it. And we go, well, what do you want to do? So we'll sit there and the property will sit vacant, costing the owner money every single day. So yeah, I think that's something when you engage a property manager, just to be mindful of like, they're going to have a certain level of expectations and you're going to have a certain level of expectations. And you want to make sure those align so that you can get your property onboarded and leased and money.
Yeah, being able to balance between it, staying idle and being able to kind of, do the necessary fixing that actually more like easily cover up those particular costs. Yeah, this is really amazing. And also, our good tenant screening is one of the most consequential decisions in property management and one of the most consistent mishandled. What did you have to quit rushing? Is it the occupancy timeline, gut instinct, optimistic assumption before your screening processes became your discipline?
I think you have to do anything before you can do anything well, you have to do it poorly.
Yeah.
And so I did it poorly for a while. And thank God it was just on my own rental properties. But I think you have to go through the reps. So when we have a screening criteria that we have developed over years and years and thousands of tenants. And I think we're getting better and better every year. We look at all the eviction, all the broken leases, and we say, what happened here? What are the metrics or what is the data saying about this person? Is there something that we need to change in our criteria or a theme that we were missing before? So we'll adjust credit score screening criteria. We'll adjust income thresholds. We'll do all that based on what we call our after action reviews each time we have an eviction or a broken lease. Now, our criteria right now is very, very good, where we evict less than 8 out of every 1,000 tenants we place. So it is very rare that we even have an issue, but it does come up. So, I think tenant qualifications and tenant screening is incredibly important, but I do think you just have to start with some foundation and say, okay, here's my clearly objective criteria. And then I have to figure out, credit score is obviously an easy one. Have they had an eviction in the past? What's their income? You want to just make sure that this person can pay for this. How stable is their job? Are they in a sales job? Are they in a new job? Or is it somebody who's been in their career 10, 15 years and a W-2 employee? Although we know that's not very stable. So, I think it's making sure that you start with something and then slowly improve it over time. And again, you can shortcut learnings, whether we did 101 turns last year. And so we have learned a lot very quickly. I hope an owner never does 100 turns in their life. If they have 2 to 3 rental properties and they own them for 30 years, they should never do 100 turns. So we're able to iterate and learn more quickly. So if you go hire a manager that knows what they're talking about and knows what they're doing, you'll be able to benefit from the learnings and all the turns and all the tenants they've screened over the past 5, 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah, I think this is really lovely, having to know those particular data so that at the end of the day, everything will be in place compared to having to load out, owing to the fact that, those particular screening was not hard in the first place. Yeah, this is amazing. And also, what is the mindset shift that separates investors who build real wealth from those who just own property?
I think they look at it as a business, kind of what we were talking about a little bit earlier, where the owners I see and the investors I see do well, they treat it like a business. They do not get emotional about decisions. Yes, it sucks to replace an air conditioning unit.
Yeah.
Sure. Yes, it sucks to replace a hot water tank. Yes, it sucks to replace a roof, but it has to be done. If it's not done, we lose the tenant and you've lost your income. Whereas, so these owners that we also get what we call accidental landlords, which those are the landlords that didn't mean to become a landlord. So they probably lived in the home or they inherited it and then they're being relocated for work, or they don't, their family has grown and they outgrew the house. Those people have a very hard time with some of the business decisions because they still look at it as little Susie's bedroom or my little Timmy's play set in the backyard. That's where Timmy played or whatever. So they don't want to paint the pink walls. They don't want to paint the blue walls. It's like, that's not a good business decision. It's an emotional decision and it's not a good business decision. So I think you just have to look at it like, again, your rental property is a business. Make it a business decision, regardless whether you lived in there, you raise your kids in there or not. You have to make a business decision, or just be okay that I'm going to give up some of the return because I'm going to preserve and I'm going to make emotional decisions. And if that's what an owner wants, it's their property at the end of the day. But, I will say I've seen personally firsthand numerous occasions where an owner is putting themselves at a financial, disadvantage because of emotions.
Yeah, putting themselves in a financial disadvantage owing to emotions. Yeah. And also for the landlord who are listening right now, who suspected their property is underperforming, but isn't sure where to look at, what is the first thing they need to quit ignoring?
The first thing they need to quit ignoring. I would say maintenance is probably the thing that really bites people in the rear end. So if you're trying to neglect maintenance, that is not, it's not like fine wine. It is not going to get better with time. So you have to make sure that you stay on top of that stuff. A leak in the ceiling might not seem like a big deal right now, but if you let that go and it becomes moldy or damages all the drywall, when water is besides fire, is really, really incredibly destructive. So you just have to make sure that I would nip little things in the bud before they become major problems. And maintenance would probably be the big one, but the other one would be tenant communication. I would very quickly get on tenant communication, whether that's they're late on their rent, whether that's they're asking you to sign a lease renewal, whether that's they're asking you to help out with some maintenance thing or want you to do an improvement on the property. Get on those things very quickly. Especially in the age we're in right now, everybody expects 2-hour Amazon delivery or over. So when you have a rental property and you're the customer service person, you need to make sure you're responding to these people in a timely manner. Whether that's as a manager, we do that with the owners. We want to make sure we're responding to the owner very timely. And the tenants, we got to make sure we respond to them timely. So they renew, they take care of the property, they feel appreciated. So I would say quickly get back with tenants and quickly nip in the bud maintenance, any sort of like looming maintenance stuff, especially any sort of preventative maintenance.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much, Cameron. This has really been amazing and really robust. And thank you so much for sharing your insight with us. Yeah, owners should treat their property as a business. Sincerely speak volumes. Also, from all this, who would love to reach out, where can they get their free rental market analysis and connect with Emerson Property Management?
Yeah, just go to emersonpropertymanagement.com. We have the free rental analysis on there. There's a bunch of guides and free calculators if you want to look at what your return on investment calculator is, or get a free guide on how to rent your property. Just anything like that. It's all on the website, or you can Google my name, Cameron Tope, and you'll find us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Camero. Thank you for the reminder that rental property is not only passive, as a system behind it. And there are the most landlords that leaving money on the table that they don't even know exists. Is exactly what this audience needs to hear. My audience would love to reach out. Check the show notes and see the link to connect with Emerson Property Management. And remember, stay comfortable with underperformance. It's never a safe option. Building a system that actually works is. Once again, it's a pleasure and honor having you on the show, Camero.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate you.